Welcome to Whole Team Eats Podcast, a 24/8 media production. Ever wonder who trains your favorite athlete? Join Tim Miller as he takes a look at the behind-the-scenes training of professional and collegiate athletes. Tim connects with trainers, athletes, and others in the sports community to share their stories. This podcast is dedicated to highlighting the work of athletes and trainers to inspire action and build community.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to an all-new episode of Whole Team Eats Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 4. I'm your host, Tim Miller, and on this show, I sit down with Tyler Lesher, head athletic trainer of UCLA men's basketball. Growing up in Casper, Wyoming, Tyler always had a passion for basketball. After injuring his shoulder in college and deciding to change direction from a nursing career, Tyler decided to pursue a career in training. This change was made possible with the guidance of several mentors along the way. On the show, we discuss how Tyler went from djing at night to make extra money to getting his first chance to work in the NBA. When Tyler first started in the NBA, he quickly realized that there was a lot to learn on the job working with high-level athletes. We went in depth on how training has evolved with sports science and how data is now used to better help athletes. Tyler is currently working with the UCLA men's basketball team and has plans to help other trainers stay at the top of their game. It's my pleasure to introduce Tyler Lesher, athletic trainer of UCLA men's basketball, to the show. Tyler, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of football trainers, so it'd be good to kind of hear a mix. And obviously, you have an emphasis on basketball and have dealt with basketball a majority of, if not all, of your training career. But just to get started, and where most of my episodes kind of start out is just, how was training in, now that we're a few weeks from the end of the year, how has training been in 2022, and what steps forward did you make as a trainer?
Proactive, new. I'm trying to think of a bunch of other catchy words about how it's been, going into the end of this year versus previous years. And I mean, we live in this the world of sports science now, right? Like last year and a couple of years before, I felt like it was really, people were starting to dip their toes into it versus now, we're all the way in. So science has really taken a forefront on, how we act day to day, but then also with, new modalities and stuff, everything's the latest and greatest versus it used to just be all right, let's do some hands-on, some exercises. And now it's heated scrapers and red light suction cups and, everything else is makes it the world's best. So, exciting. That's what I would say. It's exciting, right? Cause it's very different. It's exciting. It's fun, but it's a constant whirlwind. That's for sure.
Yeah. And was 2022, the training itself different from prior years? I know you're dealing at UCLA now, but what is your daily role at UCLA and how was the training itself?
Yeah, so my daily role is pretty much to cover all health and medical of what I call the player profile, right? For my 15 guys, how can I make sure that they check every box from, preventative exercises to injury reduction to injury rehab, corrective exercises, performance exercises, anything that is, like I said, going to relate to their athletic profile. So that goes as far as jump testing, right? Looking at their counter movement jumps. That's something that I would say is new that I've never really had to deal with in the past, right? And again, that kind of tails back to that sports science piece, but weekly jump testing, seeing if they're if our players are lacking in a certain area that may show that they are at risk of injury versus, or they're even jumpers, so we know that they're not in any risk at all, right? So outside of that, my day-to-day work is just show up, run treatments on the guys that are injured, or, that's really kind of the old school athletic training method versus now it's whether you're injured or not, I expect you to come in and do some kind of preventative work, right? So the corrective exercises, if we can take that jump signature that players have and then go, say they're a low load guy, right? That means that they're going to struggle with uh, a lot of that anterior chain movement. So they're going to struggle with dorsiflexion. They're going to struggle getting into a squat position. So they're going to hinge more. We can take all that data and then develop a corrective exercise plan based on them. And that's very new and it's very exciting, and I'm getting a lot of good results from it. So that's an awesome piece to it. Players come in, they go through their correctives or their daily vitamins. A bunch of people call them stuff like that. They'll go lift, they'll come back, we'll tape, do any last minute treatments, get them on the court, practice for 2 hours, and then post practice treatments and recovery. And it's pretty much just like the post practice is a lot like the pre practice. However, where their neuromuscular system is fired up, it's like now let's really try and take advantage of accessing greater ranges of motion. Now their tissue's like nice and pliable. We can go through like deeper ranges of motion. And then again, focus on the recovery, right? The game ready hyper, right? Or the Normatex, all that good stuff that players like and then in and out after that. I should say that, but that's like an 8-hour day. So
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, and there are all those new technologies available, like you said, Normatec, and it seems like there's just evolving year after year after year. There's so many new tools available to athletic trainers and those in the training industry. It's something we're starting to hear more of with our trainers is an emphasis on the corrective exercises and the preventative care. Where you're saying the traditional way of doing something is you would see athletes when they're injured or something goes wrong. But now there's an emphasis on, regardless if they're injured, you expect to see them coming in and doing some type of preventative work to make sure that they're working on some of those deficiencies that they used to maybe not do 5, 10, 20 years ago, whenever it was.
Exactly.
That's interesting, and we're starting to hear that a lot more. But just now taking a step back and kind of, we want to tell the audience more about your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, what your path was through school. You have a doctorate and a master's, which is pretty impressive. But could you tell us about kind of your background and how that evolved into a training career from there?
Yeah, so grew up in small town Casper, Wyoming. There's like 50,000 people back then that lived there. Spent 21 years there and went to high school at Kelly Walsh. We had our crosstown rivals, North NC, and just kind of grew up all around watching those two schools battle it out, right? Then I went to high school, played a little bit, and then from there I didn't really know what to do, right? Finished high school and you're like, all right, well now what? Had a chance to go play basketball at the local community college. Went there, Casper College, and ended up tearing my shoulder. Went in for a rebound during what were we doing? I think we were just an open run. Went up for a rebound, went to cup the ball, and in there with the trees, guy pulled my arm back, dislocated my shoulder, and then that kind of started the surgery rehab process. At the time, I was actually a nursing student and going through the nursing program, and absolutely hated it. Just was something that some of my family members had done. And, I'm just going through, I'm like, yeah, like, they make good money, you can travel, do this and that. But as I'm going through the clinical rotations, I'm like, man, this sucks. This just isn't for me. So, I was even doing like my studying in the training room, right? And then my, you have to be full-time student to receive scholarships. So the nursing, I think, maybe covered like half of it. So then I was taking like sports med classes, intro to athletic training, injury prevention and eval classes just to stay full-time for my scholarship. So I was doing like all my nursing school studying in the training room. And then finally I just said, actually it was one of my mentors, pulled me aside, like, dude, you got to get out of the nursing school. He's like, that's not for you. You don't want to be there. Just get out of there. And it was the best move I ever did. I got out of there, went straight into athletic training, and it was an awesome transition sense. So never really looked back after that. He helped me get into New Mexico State, straight into the athletic training education program. And then, I was there for 3 years, got a couple more mentors that really started to guide me, um, and really just show me, okay, what's more than nitty gritty, right? Because you're expected to do more as a student. Um, did that for 3 years, graduated, tried to find I originally wanted to go to a big school for my master's, right? Like do a full 2 year like grad assistantship. I was like, yeah, I want to go to like a Kentucky or big school, work with the basketball team. I didn't realize at the time that like those are full time positions, right? Like they're not going to put a graduate assistant with Kentucky basketball, right? So, I am lucky enough that one of my other mentors, his name's Dan Shemensky. He's the head athletic trainer for the Denver Nuggets. Him and I were talking back and forth, and he said, there's no shame in going to like a Division II if you want to work men's basketball. He goes, it kind of all depends on what you want to do. I've known forever that men's basketball was my path and trajectory, so I opted to go to Chico State, who had a GA position for men's basketball, and went there. And again, it was my team, so I was able to implement my philosophy. And although it was new and evolving, it was growth, right? It was growth for me, it was growth for my players. I was able to try a lot of things, and not a lot of it worked, but some of it did. So I was able to take that and just start honing my own philosophy, right? Did that for 2 years, and then got my master's, and then it was like, all right, well, now what? Didn't really have any leads on jobs. I was applying for a bunch of different college jobs, and fun little side story, I was actually DJing at a local bar to make money at the time. And, I got a job offer from, what was it? Sam Houston State women's basketball was the offer to go be their athletic trainer. And I turned it down because I was like, it just doesn't feel right. And my mom was pissed, right? She was like, you're a DJ, you're not making any money, and you just turned down your first job offer. And, as just kept going for like another month, and Dan with the Nuggets called me, and he goes, hey, what are you doing? Do you need a job? I said, I do. And he goes, the Cavaliers, Bulls, and the Warriors are all looking. Shoot them all your resume. So never heard from the Bulls, went through 3 interviews with the Cavs, 4 interviews with the Warriors, and ended up getting the Cavs position. So it was like a month later, I was on my way to Cleveland. And that was for an internship position, 16 and 17. Really exciting time, exciting year. It was like, the Cavs just won the World Championship that year. So my year coming into it was, so they just won it. We went back to the championship, but we lost in 5 to the Warriors that year. But it was an awesome experience. And that's really when I say like my professional education started, right? You're able to see what the pros do. And, LeBron was there, and he's working with his trainer, Mike Mancias, who was an awesome person that really just kind of like opened my eyes to how to treat, at an elite level, right? There's none of this ice and stem that you're learning in school. It's just all like exercises and movement and, these different stretches. And it really was just like for lack of better words, holy shit, my eyes got open. Right. And, I was able to, it completely changed how I treat, how my methodology, how I practice, my approach with players, and just seeing how that all happened. As I was doing that internship, I actually got sent down to the then D League because they needed a strength coach. So I had to go down to Canton, and I started off, that's my first real position, I was the head strength and conditioning coach for the Canton Charge. So I did that for their season, as well as helping out with a lot of the assistant athletic training duties. And then season was over, internship was over. I was like, all right, well, what's next? And got a phone call from the Charlotte Hornets. They were looking for a new G League head athletic trainer, and it was kind of a dual role to where, I'd be half the year in the G League and the other half I was in Charlotte, and took that position. I was there for 5 years and loved working with the Hornets. Loved the city of Charlotte. Had an absolute blast while I was there. And again, that's just started honing everything even more. Right, like as you're growing, I was the head athletic trainer and head strength coach for the G League team. Uh, that's like I said, there's not enough time in the day to do like one-on-one treatments for every single guy. So I learned how to do like implement everything in the weight room. All my rehabs were done in the weight room, how to load tissue and how to get these guys into excess ranges of motion and get them stronger through their rehab process and then get them ready to play. So I started spending less time in the training room and more time in the weight room. And now I'd say, strength and conditioning probably makes up 80 to 90% of my athletic training philosophy. And it's been a huge resource and a huge tool for me to be able to use. Um, Worked
Yeah,
with some incredible people there. That was awesome. Guys like Joe Sharp, who was he was Oklahoma City's head athletic trainer forever. He was um, USA Basketball's head athletic trainer for I think 2 Olympics. And then he got hired with the Hornets and really opened my eyes on how to uh, kind of have more of like that compassionate touch, the empathy, and how to really talk to the players, but then also talk to admin. So that opened my eyes to a lot of it. And then from there, I decided to go down to the college world. Just at the time, there was a little bit more money, and so I went down to FAU, worked with an awesome coaching staff there, and I was only there for like 8 months. And then UCLA opened up, and I knew I wanted to work at an elite level. Um, didn't really know if I wanted to live in LA or not, but it was UCLA. It was hard to like look past that, and just kind of engage with my fiance, and we were like, hey, we're gonna make some changes, and here we are. UCLA was a part of it, and I've been here for going into my second season now. And yeah, that's kind of my whole story with it was from the beginning to the end. And here we are. Went to this Elite Eight, Sweet 16 last year, Elite Eight. Knocked out in the Elite Eight last year. So
yeah, that's
here we are.
quite the story, beginning to end. And you're right, UCLA being in LA, it's a big change, but not a bad place for most people to end up in LA. Great weather, great school,
Yeah.
like great program that you have there. I actually, funny enough, I on one of my first, I think it was our founders episode of Whole Team Meets podcast, I actually spoke with my founder, and it was the day after UCLA had lost to, was it North Carolina?
Hmm.
In the Elite Eight, and they had back-to-back games. So it was St. Peter's versus Purdue, I believe it was. And
Yep.
then the second game, so it was at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, and the second game was UNC versus UCLA, which was a great game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, UCLA won for you guys, but it speaks volumes to that program, and obviously you have a big part of how those players stay at the top of their game. That's kind of what the whole idea of this podcast is, to try to promote
Hmm.
trainers like yourself and get you more recognition for the work that you're doing, because the time that you spend with these players off the court is really not going unnoticed at this point with social media emerging and more people are
Hmm.
starting to recognize the impact that you have on players. But just kind of going back through that story and how you got to where you are today, a lot of stuff to kind of dissect. I wanted to just go back to your mom's reaction to you declining Sam Houston State's women basketball position. Was that like a letdown, as in you're not using your degree for what you went to school for, or you're still living at home and you need to go get a job to get out of my house type thing?
No, I actually wasn't even living at home because she still lived in
Okay,
Wyoming. I was doing this down in New Mexico.
gotcha.
Um, but it was definitely one of those like, dude, you're making, you know, zero money being being a DJ. It was like all we were doing was making enough money to get our drinks covered for the night, really. Um, and she was just like, "You're an idiot. Like it's a full time job position, paid benefits, blah blah blah." And looking back, it's like everything happens for a reason, right? It happens to, there's a lot of things that have happened in my life that have shaped me and put me down the direction that I went, and wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, and I think in some of those situations, it's natural for a mom to want her son to
Oh,
be able to, have the benefits and the security. That's the one
yeah.
thing moms always worry about. But you're right. In some of these situations, it's almost like a gut instinct thing. And
Hmm.
not to say that that job's not a good job, because it definitely is, a great job for most people. But
Oh,
for
yeah.
you, you just knew the path that you wanted to go, and you knew some of the contacts or mentors that you had, and potential upside of what they could bring to the table. And your patience and wherewithal in that situation really paid off for
Hmm.
you to where you are today. And being able to say no to a job, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of risk when you don't have a job and you're just DJing at night. So
Yeah.
yeah, to get to where you are today and to apply to MBA level jobs, as
Hmm.
at back when you're starting, like how was it when you go through those interviews? It must have been a very exciting time for you just to be even
Hmm.
interviewing. And then when you hear from the Cleveland Cavaliers coming off of a championship year, you have LeBron there and his second stint with the team after coming back from the Heat. The city was, I'm assuming, pretty pretty excited that
City
time
was
around the
buzzing,
basketball
man.
team. Yeah, buzzing at that time. But how
Well,
was
even
it? Like, you're now.
the baseball team, sorry, real quick, the baseball team, that was the first year like the Cleveland Indians made it to the World Series. So like
Oh, I
the
didn't put that together.
game
Yeah.
game one of the World Series was in Cleveland the same night we had ring ceremony, and there, I think it was like the Quicken Loans and whatever the Cleveland Indians stadium is, they're right next to each other, and I've never seen anything like that. And people, they hate on Cleveland a lot, but man, their fans are relentless and they are faithful. And I don't know if you'll find like other cities that are that faithful like Cleveland is. It is an awesome experience.
I will have to say, I'm from Philadelphia, and we usually get the rep of
Philly's up,
being
yeah,
some of the
Philly's there, yeah.
yeah, some of the best fans. But like, yeah, no, Cleveland. It's a lot of these blue collar cities that have those
Hmm.
passionate fan bases, and Cleveland's one of those cities that probably doesn't get enough respect for the way their fans follow their teams. But like, how was it now moving into a role where you're around players like LeBron James and
Hmm.
some of these other, Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving? What was it at that point in your career to launch your career around players who are some of the best in the world?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was nerve wracking. I was scared, beyond scared straight, because it was one of those things where I thought I was hot shit coming out of my master's and thought I knew everything. Then I walked into a place, I'm like, I don't know any of this. Like
Yeah.
this is all brand new. I've never seen these machines before. I've never even heard of like it was right when the Theraguns came out,
Yeah.
and I was like, I've never even seen one of this. What's it do? Blah blah blah. And looking at how they're utilizing the weight room. It was like forever you just knew like all right, players got to lift, but you didn't realize at that level how much more was dedicated to the correctives and the true like performance stuff and how individualized everything is, and then going into the recovery aspect, like how it's got to be individualized and for nutrition timing, hot bath, cold bath, type stuff. It was just all very eye opening and uh, absolutely just changed my life. And then, like, one of my favorite things that I always bring up with the one of the best things I learned while I was in Cleveland, it was with Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye. So, like, they were on there, and James Jones. So, they were all kind of on their way out of their careers. Uh, but the one thing that those three did every single day was one, they didn't really party, but like, after a night out or a late night game, they would all wake up the next day at like 6:45 in the morning. And then they would do about like a 10-minute bike ride, a little mini band activation, and then they would go eat breakfast after that. But like that's one of the keys that they would say was a pillar for their like longevity and health. It wasn't like they were laying in bed going like, "Oh, I'm sore all day." It was like they got up and they got moving. So then I internalized that, and now it's like, we might play on a Saturday night, and I'm doing treatments at like 7:30 in the morning on Sunday. It's like, guys, like we're not waiting all day. We have a 2 hour gap that we're going to get in and get our work done, and you're going to feel significantly better the rest of the day and moving on. So, like little stuff like that's what you learn, right? Where they don't teach you that in a textbook. There's nothing in school about that, but again, you learn it from your clinical experiences and just your professional experiences to really be able to use. And yeah, little stuff like that's been awesome.
Yeah, I think there's always a sense of like what they call imposter syndrome whenever you start a
Oh
new job,
yeah.
whether it's in the training space or any other business for that matter. Everybody thinks you go through school, you have a master's or a doctorate, and you're going to jump in day one and know everything. And the truth of the matter is, especially in the training world, there's so much to learn. And, every player and athlete is so different in their needs
Hmm.
and where they are in their career. Like you have rookies and you have guys on their way out, like you mentioned, Richard Jefferson, Channing Frye, James Jones. But you start to learn the differences between different ages, different body types, and obviously it was a great learning experience for you. So you leave Cleveland after a couple years, and you are now with the Charlotte Hornets. Obviously, you're in the presence of, I guess, Michael Jordan, right? He's the owner of the
The
Hornets,
goat. Yep. Yep.
the GOAT, right? So I'm assuming you spent some time around Michael Jordan and met him as well. But you have
Hmm.
players like Kemba Walker, and
Yep.
I'm assuming that was another great learning experience for you in your
Dude,
progression of your career.
huge. Yeah, guys like Kemba, Cody Zeller, Marvin Williams, like all these just awesome dudes. And then we had like a good young core that was coming in for like Miles Bridges, Devontae Graham, Malik Monk, PJ Washington, and then I can never go without saying these two, but Cody and Caleb Martin, so they were a part of the Martins who I was on my way out with my last year. I spent a lot of time with Caleb, but he's absolutely killing it with the Miami Heat, by the way. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so just the learning experiences with those guys, because again, like Cody, Kemba, and Marvin, like they were in their kind of later parts of their career, right? They're getting a little older and just kind of learning how they take care of their body and seeing what they did on a day in and day out. Of Cody was always the first person in the building. Came in, got treatment, ate breakfast, got more treatment, lifted, shot, practice, and just kind of seeing how these guys do it. And at the time, we got a new medical staff in, medical and performance staff in. Like I said, guys like Joe Sharp, Quentin Sawyer, Aaron Carcow, Pal Bernhardt, all these guys are like still my friends and mentors that I learned a ton from. I'd say Pal Bernhardt and Aaron Carcow, like I still, I'm in a text thread with those guys and talking to them constantly about things that they see and that they're doing. Pal's now the director of rehab for the Washington Wizards, and Aaron's doing a lot of private work in Charlotte, and they're just absolutely killing it. So, uh, again, being around those guys helped shape my philosophy even more, open my eyes to more things. I'd never heard of things like, at the time it was like FRC and whatnot, or like DNS classes, PRIs, some different breathing techniques, and they're coming in and using and applying all this stuff and getting huge results with them. So then, naturally it's like, I got to try this and figure it out. And then really like during that time, the big deal was, my exposure to dry needling. I was able to see what the players' response was to that and seeing how much better the players were getting based on dry needling. So got certified in that while I was there, and that's been an absolute game changer for me and my treatment with players and seeing them progress, from like being able to recover overnight and getting them on the court the next day.
Can you expand on, was it dry needling?
Dry needling, yep.
Can you
So
expand on
uh,
exactly what that is?
yeah, trigger point dry needling. A lot of people assume it's acupuncture. Same type of needle, but uh, completely different technique, I guess. Acupuncture is a very Eastern medicine. where you're trying to change like the flow of energy and stuff versus dry needling. It's like I'm trying to trigger or trying to needle a trigger point. I'm trying to make a mechanical change within the tissue. It's actually the only thing that I'm aware of that we can actually utilize to make a change within the tissue, right? Everything else is going to be touch, vibration, cups, scrape, all that's external, right? It's the only thing that we have that can penetrate the skin. And again, I can put it in the muscle tissue. You can wind up fascia. You can help realign scar tissue. And like I said, it's been a huge piece of in my tool belt. And I needle guys every day.
Yeah, and I feel like throughout your career, you're going to have different breakthroughs and different tools added to kind of your repertoire and what you're able to use with athletes. And then you'll see how athletes respond, and you're going to say, this applies to most of my athletes or only a few of my athletes. And it sounds like this is one of those tools that applies to a lot. I did have a question. So now you're at UCLA, and we've kind of made the progression through your career at this point to where you are today. But correct me if I'm wrong, Marvin Williams, he went to UNC, is that
UNC,
correct?
Yep.
I don't know if you keep in touch with him, but is he one of those guys who might shoot you a text after the Elite Eight last year, knowing you're at UCLA, and say,
he is that guy.
You guys talk trash at all? Or?
I didn't because I have my tail between my legs, but he is that guy. He's one of the nicest dudes ever, man. You text him and he just immediately just started off on a conversation. Hey man, miss you, blah blah blah. He was awesome. I absolutely love Marv. He's incredible.
Yeah, I didn't know if he might shoot you a text after the UNC beat UCLA. And
Joel Berry was one. Joel Berry was one. I'm good friends with Joel, and definitely got enough win from him. So,
gotcha.
Oh yeah.
So now you're UCLA, and it feels like just from hearing your story, it's a shift in how you actually manage players, and you talked earlier in your story about how communication is such a big part of what you do, and all the trainers we speak with, there's a larger emphasis on communication piece of things, because you need to communicate what you're doing and the reasoning behind why you're doing it, and the players have to buy into your training methodologies. So is it more difficult to do that with college players than it is professional players, or like what is it like, the communication piece and the motivation behind it?
I think it's both the same as far as like college and NBA. By the time players in the NBA, they've had more things kind of tested on them, I guess. So they're more experienced in a variety of treatment methods versus like the young kids are coming in and, they're new and they go through high school and they're only told, again, like only go to the trainer if you need them, versus now it's, I want to see you every day in some capacity, right? The biggest piece to it is, yes, it's communication, but it's voicing that you care and you care about every aspect of them, whether it's mental health, physical health, emotional health, whatever it might be. And that'll help kind of get that buy-in. Like I want to know all my players on a personal level. I want to know how they think, act, operate, so that when something does go wrong, I can pick up on it. It's almost like kind of being that father figure, I guess, to where like, if something's going on with your son, like you want to know exactly what it is and when. The perfect example I give to that is like, if I just met you and you have a concussion, how would I know if you had a concussion or not, right? Like if I don't know how you are day to day, like, this might just be you. This is your norm. Versus if I know you, like I know when something's wrong. So I spend a significant amount of time with like each and every player, learning about them, about their families, where they come from, just as much as possible. And, I try and keep the training room, it's very lax, open. Anybody can come in at any time. It's kind of like the barbershop where we're laughing, joking. We have a lot of serious talks. We have a lot of talks about aliens and if they exist. We have a lot of, it's just, but like during all of it, players are working. And the overarching thing with all of it is, the best way to get buy-in with players is they need to feel a change or they need to feel a challenge. Okay, so like, are they in pain, and can you get them out of pain, or is there something that I can do that they can't, right? Am I going to challenge them to get into a position that they can't get into, or, move in a certain capacity, that kind of thing. Those are some of the biggest aspects that I've learned of as far as getting the players and getting their buy-in. And yeah, I mean, at any given point, there could be 10 guys in the training room just going through a variety of movements that they've never seen before. They're laughing, they're joking, and it's a very wholesome, community within our guys. But they also respect each other's boundaries, and it's an awesome experience. It's an awesome life experience for myself.
Yeah, and it feels like you get a very good understanding of like the team chemistry, and you play a role in that team chemistry is, having them all in the training room together and interacting with all of them and being that father figure to them when they need it. So you're definitely a part of them as like a team. As where some private trainers only deal with players on an individual basis, you're very ingrained in the
Right.
program and getting those buy-in from those players. There's something, moving past that we actually spoke about when we connected, was something you told me that kind of stood out to me. I haven't heard from a lot of trainers before, but when you're thinking not just about the athletes that you train, but your biggest investment should be for anybody in yourself. And you put an emphasis on your health and making sure that your health
Yeah.
comes before you focus on anybody else. And that is true,
Mhm.
whether that's physical health, mental health. It should always come to yourself first. But something neat that I heard from you was that you're actually building programs, like workout programs,
Mhm.
for other trainers, because other trainers let their physical, mental health kind of go by the
Yep.
wayside and focus all of their energy and attention on the athletes that they're training. But can you expand on that real quick for our audience and just tell them about why you're doing that?
Yeah. So I'm just a firm believer that our self care should not go by the wayside because of somebody else, right? I've seen it in a variety of instances, whether it's athletic trainers, they're getting up to log early mornings with their players, whether they're based on the high school setting, college, or whatever it might be. They're eating convenient fast foods because, again, like they're neglecting, meal prepping or whatever it might be, right? Things that take time because a lot of athletic trainers don't have a lot of time throughout the day, right? Their hands are full. A lot of them work multiple sports, right? Like if you're, a lot of high schools only have one athletic trainer and they have 450 people they got to worry about. It's very easy to let your health go by the wayside because you're concerned about your athletes. Um, I did that as I was kind of getting into my professional career a little bit. I noticed that I wasn't working out as much. I wasn't doing the things I needed for myself, and I started to feel after a while how it was affecting my mental health and how that was starting to affect my performance. I was a lot more on edge. I was snappy. I wasn't giving the athletes everything that I could because I was neglecting myself. Um, so I had to make change, right? And that change was I had to focus on myself and start getting my own workouts in and eating clean and doing the things that I needed to so that I could give my athletes the best, right? I can't give them the best version of myself if I'm not giving myself the best version, right? So I'm a very big on self care. If my athletes come in for treatments at 7:45 or 8, that means, it's not always great, but I got to get up at 5:20, 5:15 so I can let the dog out and go get my workout in before they end. Because, again, that's when I'm going to be most mentally clear. I'm not going to be tired, rubbing my eyes as the players come walking in, slamming coffee. I want to be ready, I want to be wired, and I want to give them my best. Um, and, a lot of trainers, and me included in this, they don't want to sit there and design a full program for themselves to do. And that includes strength coaches, and that includes it's very hard to do something that you prescribe, but it's really easy to do something that someone else prescribes for you. So I wanted to give a platform to other athletic trainers, strength coaches, and honestly, just I've had a variety of people, whether it's ex-athletes or whoever, sign up for these programs. But they just want to they want a program to follow that's easy structured, that's not going to keep them in the gym for, you know, an hour and a half of their day, but they can get in and out in 45 minutes and feel strong, be mentally clear, and have structure to follow and get benefits out of it, right? So that was kind of my goal with this, and just it's been awesome. You know, originally my intent wasn't to get like, hey, let me just focus on athletic trainers and strength coaches, but it's just kind of how it all evolved was athletic trainers reaching out and saying, hey, how can, you know, do you do programs? Do you do custom programs or whatever? And I was like, man, like there's a need for this. And, you know, if I can kind of be that, I guess, like beacon light to kind of talk to them and reinforce them, like, you know, you can work out, your self-health is important. It needs to come first before your athletes. You know, I want to be the resource for that, you know, so that's kind of how that whole thing started and ended up molding into what it is now.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to who you are, and you know, having that self-awareness is difficult a lot, and being able to reflect on yourself and kind of look at where are you lacking and where could you be better as not only, you know, a person but as a trainer, and having that mental clarity because of the workouts is something that you kind of zeroed in on. Just to start to wrap up here, one thing I like to ask a lot of the, you know, trainers who come on the show is, you know, you've come a long way in a short period of time. It seems like you've had you know, experience at all different levels. But where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Hopefully with 5 national championship rings from UCLA.
That's a great
That'd be
answer.
awesome. That's ideal. You know, I'll be married by then, but just you know, we'll be in the Big Ten. I can see myself definitely starting a more of a private venture outside of UCLA and working in conjunction with that. I have developed a lot of awesome relationships with uh, some, you know, influential people around LA that want training and treatment by me. So I can see myself maybe opening up a private studio space and train people out of there. Um, Yeah, it's the best I got, man. I just want to, you know, I'm open to any and everything, but you know, you know, another reason why I kind of started opening my like programs and everything outside of just the 15 guys that I treat and train every day. I wanted to be able to treat more people and help more people. You know, it shouldn't just be like I don't want all my, you know, efforts to only go towards 15 people and ignore the other 7.8 billion or however many there are. Like I want to be able to affect as many people as I possibly can. So, um, you know, that's kind of what started it, and now it's just a kind of a snowball effect, right? And how, you know, can I help people via online if they're here in LA or whatever it might be, right? So that's kind of been my focus, and just kind of open to see how the ball rolls with that and go from there.
Yeah, no, that's a great vision, and something we hear from a lot of people is, you know, those trainers who do start with affiliated with a program or a team, that there is a natural progression where you're gonna eventually, you know, in your case, we don't know if it's gonna happen, but move and do something on your own, right, in the private sector of training. So
Hmm.
that's very common. Um, and you know, lastly, I like to get a feel for, you know, obviously we've heard your journey from start to finish, but what advice would you give to yourself starting out, and would you change anything about your journey?
I would not change anything at all. I think what I would tell like my younger self is be more empathetic. Let players know that you care from the beginning. You know, don't wait until something happens and then, you know, I'll say like kind of that young strength coach, like aggressing, like it's my way or the highway. You know, like be empathetic, be willing to adapt and change, and be moldable, right, per each individual. I think that if I would have done that early on, I would have had a lot more or a lot better connections. I'm not saying I had bad connections, but I would have had better connections with my athletes that maybe would have helped them more. Um, but that, you know, that's a lot of the big things that like I really internalize now is like I want to be um, moldable and very empathetic for my players and give them everything that they need so that they can be successful.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, obviously that's going to just help build and strengthen future relationships. And you're still early in your career, it seems like, and you have a lot of different avenues and channels to explore. And we're obviously going to wish the best for you in your training career. So once again, Tyler Lesher, athletic trainer, UCLA men's basketball. It was great to have you on the show and hear your story. And we'll be making sure that we keep up to date and let our audience know as things progress in your training world as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.